Are you a knowledge seeker? A knowledge seeker. Okay, so, or seeker of knowledge. So, I've been on a little bit of a reading binge, books. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that I'm revisiting my own library. And I'm rereading some books that I've had for decades, and some of them I go into the I read the first chapter, I'm into it like 2, 3, 4 pages, and it's like, oh no, and it goes into the giveaway box. Others I'm voraciously rereading. Others I'm dipping into, because especially if they're larger, like reference type um, books, I'm dipping into them and just, revisiting um, that feeling of wonder of when I was a brand new knowledge seeker, seeker of knowledge. Every time I hear the term seeker of knowledge, I kind of roll my eyes. And I'll tell you why. Because I use this term as well, seeker of knowledge. And when I'm interacting with people on the internet and they're asking me, because over the last, for those of you who don't know, you're just meeting me for the first time on YouTube. I've been on the internet now since 1998, talking about Italian folk magic, Italian witchcraft. To be more succinct, I was talking about Italian witchcraft, stregoneria, and which is Italian sorcery and folk magic and that kind of stuff since 1998. And people will always approach me and ask me, what books do you recommend I read? And I always, 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 and this has not changed in 22 years I've been on the internet, always reply, everything you can get your hot little hands on, because that's what I did. And that's what I continue to do. I'm an avid reader. There's been times in my life where there's been no time to read, and I've felt the effects of that. Now, in the last few years, I think it's 4 years now that I have an Audible account. Since Audible first came to existence, I signed up for an Audible account even before it was available in through Amazon Canada. Um, I've had an Audible account, and in order to start reading again, when I didn't have time to actually read books, I started listening to audiobooks. And for me, that opened up a whole world, because I listened to audiobooks on my night shifts. I listened to audiobooks when I was driving. I listened to audiobooks when I was waiting to pick up my girls after school when they were younger. That kind of thing. Um, so I've carried that forward now for like many, many years, since the inception of Audible, the audiobooks, and they're a godsend. Also, what's a godsend is how many books are available in audio, which is incredible. Um, Currently, I'm listening to How to Be an Elder by Clarissa Pinkola Estes, and it's narrated by her, and it's in her. Um, I just love the way she speaks. I love her story. She is a storyteller extraordinaire. So I'm really enjoying that. So Audible, Audible, Audible. I freaking love Audible. I know that our local library, my husband tells me our local library also has audiobooks that can be borrowed digitally the same way. So I'm going to be looking into that. So audiobooks, because I am a seeker of knowledge. I've also been I've been acquiring some new books. Some new books are coming into my home, and it's been a long time since there's been such an overhaul of my library. And it started with Letters from the Devil's Forest by Robin Artisan. And and I live in Canada, for those of you who don't know, and Amazon Prime is no, it's not reliable. It's not really Amazon Prime. The only thing we're getting here is free shipping, but it could take up to 2 weeks for something to arrive. And again, I'm loving my Kindle, like I'm loving my Kindle all over again. Like I loved my Kindle already, and I have a Kindle Paperwhite. I've had it for years and years and years, but it's gotten a little clunky in terms. So my wonderful husband bought me a tablet, and I'm loving Kindle all over again. But the brand new tablet is just incredible, and so I'm reading books on Kindle. I'm listening to books on Audible. I'm ordering hardback books to have, because I just love books. I guess I really don't care what format they come in. So yeah, so that's what so when someone asks me, what should I read? Everything you get your hot little hands on. If you are a member of my Facebook group, Ruth's Kitchen, do a search in the search box for books on folk magic. And Michael Pasco, one of the members, he posted some books on folk magic. And it's not all Italian folk magic, and it really doesn't matter, because folk magic is folk magic. Wherever you go in the world, especially where the world is old, all right, not so much New World, but even New World, right? But Europe, any country in Europe, North America, South America, anywhere you go, there is one commonality, and that is folk magic, and some form of what the British call druidry. And sometimes it's kind of mixed together. So yeah, read everything you could get your hands on, and there's a whole bunch of books posted in that thread. Just do a search in the search box for books, folk magic books, and yeah. So that brings me to the subject of seeker of knowledge. I'm the first one to admit, I spend a lot of time in my head. A lot. So much. That's the kind of person I am. I spend so much time up here that I can completely lose touch with my physical body, my physical existence. Not to the point where it affects my ability to do my job or live my life, but to the point where I'm out of touch. Some of it may stem from, I've had chronic pain ever since I can remember, since I was a child. So maybe that's part of it. Like, maybe I started very young seeking refuge in my mind to get out of my body, so to speak, because it's painful. Who knows? But seeker of knowledge. Well, here's another thing I say to people when they ask me, what should I read? You should read everything. But the term seeker of knowledge, and I use this as well, is inaccurate. Or if not inaccurate, it's unhelpful, because knowledge is not something that you find. You're not going to go somewhere and find knowledge. Or just like, oh my gosh, when I was growing up in the 70s, the biggest thing was the people that were that half generation before me, that were teenagers when I was a kid in the 70s, they were all going to Europe, backpacking across Europe and doing to find themselves. It was a trope in all the TV shows I was watching. It was a trope in all the novels I was reading. I'm looking at Jew Scholastic's book services. They weren't going to they weren't going to physically find themselves in these places. You don't find knowledge externally, and you don't find yourself externally. What's really going on is that in the seeking of knowledge, when someone is interested, like me, in metaphysics and folklore and folk magic and herbal magic and and plant magic and all those, and astrology and all that stuff, why am I voraciously reading all these books? Because it all goes back to when I first started reading on subjects of metaphysics. I was searching for myself. I was reading the books where I saw myself in them, whether it was beliefs, whether it was philosophies, whether it was experiences, whether it was interests. So this is why someone like me is constantly reading and constantly looking for more to read. I'm looking to find myself, to see myself in what I'm reading, in order to find myself, in order to understand who I am. So this is the mechanism of what's really going on when someone is seeking knowledge. Because language is important, people, and I'm going to bring it up, and I know some of you are going to roll your eyes because you can't stand it when I bring it up, and I don't care. I'm bringing it up. Language is important. Knowledge is not something you find. Knowledge is something you acquire as the result of living experiences. I'll repeat that again. Knowledge is not something you're going to find in a book. Knowledge is something that you acquire from experience. I'll put it, and let me put it into I'm going to put it in the context of when I teach the nursing process. In the nursing process, we collect data. So the first thing we do is collect data. Collecting data is what metaphysicians, witches, whatever you call yourself, astrologers, tarot readers, whatever it is you call yourself, pagans, Christians, whatever. Your data collection in the nursing process, your data collection equivalent is reading all the books, just like I'm doing, reading all the books. Then, after you've read all the books, and let me tell you, you're never going to read all the books because there's always new books coming out. There's always books you don't know about, that that you never heard about, that you're never going to hear about. You know what I mean? Like, you can't. But once you've read, and I say, why don't you give yourself a little bit of a limit, just to a little time limit. Read for a whole year, but then you got to get up out of that armchair, and you have to start applying. You have to start taking this data and with this data, going out there and try to create experiences for yourself, whether it is making your own incense, whether it is reading the cards, whatever it is, a ritual, it doesn't matter. Creating, making your own astrological chart from scratch with books, the old-fashioned way. Whatever it is, you have to have experiences. And it's in the experiences that you acquire knowledge. So data is what you acquire from reading. That's all data. It's all raw data because you haven't tested it. You haven't applied it. You go out and you have experiences of your own where you apply some of this data. And through the application of this data, you acquire knowledge. Then you can go back to what you're reading and analyze. That's where the magic happens, my friends. The magic happens when you have the experiences and you've acquired the knowledge that you can then sit back down in your armchair, and when you read the data again or new data, your knowledge informs your analysis of what it is you are reading. And that is when discernment starts to take place. You can't discern what is correct information unless you've gone out and experienced it and acquired your own knowledge. Simple, right? Once you start experiencing, I'll put in the context of witchcraft, sorcery, herbal medicine, or like folk magic. Once you start practicing your own rituals, you find out what you like. And I'm never one to take a spell book and do a spell straight from a book. I'm also not one to really do much in terms of spell work, but suppose, for the sake of this conversation, suppose I am, a more, I approach it the same way as I do cooking. I'll read a recipe, and then I'll substitute with what I have in the house or what I prefer. So I could look at a recipe and think, oh, this is great, but I really, really hate fennel. So I'm not going to put fennel in that recipe, even though the recipe calls for it. But I have the knowledge to replace the fennel with something that will do the similar thing for taste. So let's say I do love star anise. So I would replace fennel with star anise, which is kind of rings the same bells, but it's more palatable for me. It's more enjoyable. Same thing with magic. It's the same thing with magic. Read the spells, read the rituals, but then you have to customize them to who you are, what your practice is, what your preferences are. You're going to burn an incense that you can't stand the smell of because it's called for in that ritual? No, you're trying to create energy around you. You're trying to create you're trying to manipulate energy. You're trying to create an environment that mirrors who you are internally. So no, don't do what someone else is doing, but take cues from what someone else is doing. Read the books, read them all, collect the data. But then put them down and start having your own experiences applying that data so that you can acquire the knowledge in order to then go back to more data that you are collecting so that you could discern, you can analyze this data that you are reading. And then by experiencing and by doing your own magic, practicing your own magic, evaluate the results. And when you evaluate the results, you have to have results in order to evaluate them, and you have to be able to evaluate results in order to then tweak what you are doing to obtain the results that you want to obtain. And that is pretty much how what I just did was apply the nursing process to magic. In the comments below, share with me, are you a seeker of knowledge? How long have you been collecting data, but you still haven't gotten up from that armchair to put it to practice? Because we've all been there. And sometimes I'm there and sometimes I'm not. But sometimes I go back to there. And it's fascinating and it's fun to share. All right. Thank you so much for tuning in. And wherever you are in the world, I'm wishing you all a beautiful day. Bye-bye.